Hello everyone, today I'm looking at Crash Bandicoot. It was really funny that before I made this video I was asking my brother, uh, so what animal is Crash Bandicoot? Of course, it's in the name. It does describe him as a marsupial though, which I think is a kind of mammal that carries its young in a pouch or something. But in any case, I digress. Crash Bandicoot for the PS1. Surprisingly fun platformer, and I say that as someone who has definitely had an experience with lots and lots and lots of bad platforming. And watching the gameplay of Crash Bandicoot, I just assumed that this was an absolute hell on wheels experience. That this was just one of those old classic games that was extremely frustrating, which it is to an extent. And the level design definitely makes it very challenging, but in my experience, when there's platforming, platformers or platforming sections in other games that aren't even platformer specific, the biggest enemy is not the level. It's actually the controls themselves. It's overcorrecting, slipping, having more momentum and going off the edge. Lots of very frustrating things that aren't necessarily the player's fault that really do aggravate the experience. What's really surprising with Crash Bandicoot is that the controls are actually really, really tight, like very, very intact or well made. I'm not exactly sure how to say it, but when you're controlling Crash, it seems archaic, but when you decide to stop moving in a forward direction, you don't have any continued momentum. You just simply go forward, and then you stop short and you drop straight down. And you kind of use his shadow as a guide point. And so on the bridge levels, which are really, really difficult, using a shadow as a guide point, knowing exactly how much that if you stop moving, he'll go kind of straight down. If you start backing up, you'll get more speed backwards. It was actually very intuitive, and I think the biggest thing about the game is that it's extremely forgiving with things like sometimes I'll go off the cliff or off an edge, and it'll still let me jump, even though Crash has kind of exited that plateau. He's actually still able to jump, which is just so forgiving. There are plenty of other times where platforms I thought I've totally missed the platform, I haven't gotten it at all, and I'll land on it shockingly, and I'll just think, wow, that was actually very generous of the game to actually do that. So yeah, from a very pure gameplay perspective, I mean, it really surprised me how well made Crash is, even all these years later. It definitely reminds me of how I was so surprised by Spyro and how tight the controls were. It's interesting that Mark Cerny was the executive producer on, I think, both those games, this one being Naughty Dog, the other one being Insomniac, but each one had an intense focus on, well, the gameplay, the movement, the actual fundamental aspects of the character. And similar to Spyro, Crash, he can jump and spin. And like that's it. He has two moves, and that's it. I guess the other thing I also noticed is this is where the now the infamous meme of whoa, of the whoa meme comes from. It's whenever he not every time he dies, but usually when he dies, he'll do a whoa. And I was kind of just mildly entertained to just see that in its natural environment, I suppose. But yeah, the game is fairly simple, and it just it's a real platformer where it's all about timing of different platforms, ledges. And again, the crazy thing is that these kind of games, they usually drive me absolutely nuts, crazy with just how frustrating they are. But I was actually having a very pleasant time because it felt like most of the time I was screwing up and the game wasn't screwing up. I was mostly doing what I was intending to do, and with my experience with other platformers is that that's rarely the case. It's always the controls that are kind of lacking. Like even in Mario 64, there'll be a slip, and you can end up going off an edge or something. It's not your fault at all. I still love Mario 64, but even comparing the platformers and the early 3D movement of these games, from this to Tomb Raider, Spyro, Mario, it's so fascinating to see how just even the quality in these platformers is just really well done. And it's something that we kind of take for granted, or we don't even really do anymore. You kind of expect movement in modern games to be, decent enough. And the movement in a game really does reflect a lot of things about it. For example, when I was starting a game, I mean, you have the main menu, you have the control scheme, you have, the kind of game it is. But when you're actually able to control and move your character, that tells me the most about what the game is, how it functions, and what kind of game it really is. It tells me, what's my base movement speed. When I started playing Doom: The Dark Ages, like, okay, it's going to be like a little bit just about as fast as Eternal. It's not going to be the stand and fight thing that I thought it was going to be. When you start Silent Hill 2 and you're controlling James Sunderland and you have tank controls and you have this methodical pace, that tells you the kind of game it really is. And it's so interesting to see gameplay for so long about certain games and then controlling them yourself, and how there is a discrepancy in what you expected and how the game essentially feels. Because really getting your hand on movement is just the core aspect of really any game. But yeah, the basic premise, the story is not anything. There's a lot of things in here that remind me a lot of Banjo-Kazooie. The evil scientist throwing, these flasks of potions at you that explode. The fact that there's not an evil witch, but an evil scientist now that kidnaps. I don't know if they actually give her a name. This one, I think they just call her the female Bandicoot. No, they give her a name. What am I saying? But of course, he calls her the female Bandicoot. And so, you just have to save the girl. Very basic premise. I think it's really funny, though, that at the end of the game, when you do end up beating Dr. Nitro or whatever, she's actually way taller than Crash, and so she'll give him a big hug, but she's like holding him up. So I don't know. I just thought that was funny. Like, you have to save the damsel in distress, but she's like super tall compared to him. But yeah, like the game is super simple, and it kind of sets off saying, there are only 32 levels. And, the real difficulty comes in where you have to start getting gems and stuff, which is just impossibly difficult, because in order to get a gem, you basically need to get a perfect score. And what that means is that, so there are crates in the level, and they expect you to get a perfect score. Not only do you have to smash all the crates, but you have to not die once. And this is a game where everything, and I mean everything, kills you in one hit. Enemies in the level, falling down, holes. One thing I have to really give them compliments for is that, again, something that almost reminded me of Hotline Miami, is that when you die, the game does not stop. It immediately just keeps going until you run out of lives, almost like an arcade game. But what another smart thing that they really did is the fact that the music does not stop. This is like a big thing, that when the music resets, that's the worst thing, that when you die in a video game, because when music resets, it feels like, it just feels like a failure. It feels like, okay, I have to reset the whole motion now. So the music stays consistent even when you die. You don't even have to press anything. It'll just automatically respawn you, and it'll let you keep going, essentially. And so yeah, it's mostly platforming, X to jump, square to do a little spin attack. And the overworld is very much like Donkey Kong Country, where you go around a bunch of islands and stuff. And you have different enemies that jump down at you or whatever. There are also 2D and 3D sections, but most of it is kind of what Temple Run is based off, where you have a very narrow corridor with a bunch of things you need to avoid, and it's just very, very tight platforming. And just, the levels start out honestly pretty easy, but they get hard very, very quickly. I think everyone's least favorite, or the infamous one, is High Road, where you basically have this whole section of this bridge, and you have to basically land on these specific beams. Some of them break. Then you have it introduces turtle shells. You have to hit them and then jump off the turtle shell so you get extra distance. And as frustrating as that was, it was really actually entertaining. I just can't get around the fact that I expected to completely be frustrated and hate this game, but it's actually coded a lot better than modern games, where even though it's just strictly platforming, it actually feels like you're always improving every time you fail. While with other platformers or other platform sections, it just feels almost like RNG BS, that the controls themselves are betraying you in some weird, convoluted way. Also, the boss fights are pretty interesting and decent. Considering you can only jump and spin, it has a nice variety to it. The first boss is just jumping on his head. Second boss, you have to knock these things back at this other guy. Third boss, you're kind of jumping on these TNT things to, have them flow downstream and detonate on this other guy. The next boss, you have to like hide behind this furniture, and and all the bosses, they're pretty cartoony. There's like a tribal guy, and then like a kangaroo and whatever. But then like the fourth boss is like called Pinstripe, and he's just a guy with a machine gun, like a mafia guy with a Thompson. And I just thought that was really funny. And that one's pretty simple. You just have to like wait until you have to wait and cover until he runs out of ammo or he taunts, and you just hit him. It's pretty honestly simple. I thought there was some big strategy for that one, but no, it's just waiting and attacking, honestly. And then you have the sub-final boss, which is the other scientist, and that one was actually really fun because he had like a 2-stage thing where he would throw a bunch of potions at you, and the green potion turns into this little slime that tracks you around. And I was just really honestly confused as to what to do. I thought I had to like wait for it to stop jumping on its third bounce and then smack it towards him. Like that was the most logical thing to me. But what you're actually supposed to do is jump on it and that take away his health bar. I guess the amount of potions he has left. I don't know. And then he ups it to like 2 and 3 blobs. And finally, he turns into this mega version, and then you just have to jump on these steps and then jump on him as he charges at you. I don't know. I found it very entertaining, honestly. And then you have the final boss, Dr. Nitro, and again, surprisingly easy. I think he's actually one of the easier bosses in a weird way. He just shoots a different bunch of laser beams at you, and you just have to dodge them all, except the green ones, you just hit back at him. And I surprised myself by beating him like on my 3rd try. It was kind of a nice ending to a game where the platforming wants to make you rip your hair out at some places. Again, even though I'm saying that I really did kind of enjoy the platforming, there were definitely parts that were absolutely infuriating, as they should be. I know. I find that the game is very generous with lives, and you'll still run out. It's still very unfair in its levels, but I really did think that there were a lot of lives in certain places that it was just very generous. Like, oh wow, you're actually wanting me to play this game. Again, there's some weird moments because it is still technically a 3D environment. You can kind of go up and down the environment, and sometimes that is necessary, and I've been screwed up when I thought I was jumping in the right way, but I wasn't. There's of course occasional issues with depth perception where it's like, oh, I can't jump that far, but you really can. If it's funny, when I think about a failure of depth perception, I really think of Prince of Persia. There were so many times in that game, for whatever reason, I just thought there's no way, he can jump all that way over there. And there are times when if he falls 10 meters, that'll be like a death zone, and other times when it's like 30 meters and it'll be a death zone. But anyway, and yeah, the game is relatively short, and it was kind of confusing at first because I thought it did the whole box thing, how many boxes you miss, but it's only when you do a perfect run, or sorry, a deathless run, then it shows you how many boxes you missed and how much more you have to do to get to the gem. And once you get all the gems, you can unlock the secret ending in the corridor. The one thing about Crash that is honestly extremely infuriating, and well, I guess on that, since I brought up Prince of Persia, I think this is really the perfect game to have a rewind mechanic. I know it's pretty much the most cheating thing you can possibly do, but in my experience, games like Braid, Braid, the entire concept of it really was, what if Super Mario had a rewind mechanic? And I found it to be a lot of fun, because then you can just be like, oh, okay, this is actually what it would look like if I was playing properly. I also, on the Switch, what do you call it? Like the Virtual Console, or their version of the classic whatever. there's essentially this function where you can just rewind in time up to like 2 minutes. And so playing a lot of classic games where, you just don't know how am I supposed to jump here. And, I understand the whole thing about the grind and the difficulty, but that's kind of like from the arcade era. It's just really more fun to be able to rewind on these extremely tough platformers where it's like, okay, what kind of jump do I actually have to do here? Because it's one thing to know what you have to do in the game and just to have to do it. And then there's another matter of not knowing what to do. Sometimes like, okay, do I have to hit this guy? Do I have to punch this guy? I remember the scientist in the lab, like he would keep electrocuting me. And I realized, oh, you have to wait because he's on a cycle. I was like, why would a human be on a cycle? It made more sense if it was a machine or something. But yeah, he's on a cycle of when he activates electrocution. It's like, okay, so I just have to wait. Got it. But it took me like 10 lives to figure that out. I was like, why is this sometimes working and it's sometimes not? So yeah. Of course, there are things you can pick up. I mean, the game is so minimalist, but it's so complex in those small elements. So, for example, you can get these Wampa fruits or whatever that you pick up, and if you get 100 of them, you get an extra life. So that's your only incentive to really pick them up. You can also pick up lives as well, and the different boxes are, there's mystery boxes that have lives in them. There are TNT boxes that explode after 3 seconds. What's really surprising and shocking to me, honestly, and of course, there's a tribal mask that gives you like an extra hit, and if you collect 3 of those in a row, you get invincibility. But again, what really, really shocked me and surprised me, I've never, ever seen this done in any other game, I think ever, is that your spinning attack, your main kind of, melee attack or whatever, it's able to also affect items and dropped items. So if you open a chest or even you're by a Wampa fruit and you end up, spinning near it, you'll actually smack it away from you. And I was just completely perplexed by this. I've never seen a game where you have an obvious pickup that it benefits the player and you have the opportunity to destroy it. It's honestly just a mind-breaking and such a simple thing that I never considered that was possible. The ability to and I think it even works on power-ups and lives. If you spin near it, you'll actually destroy it and throw it away, which is I don't know. That's just an insane concept. It's just a big opportunity for a lot of facepalm, self-hating moments. I don't know. I've never seen that in any other game, so that's very kind of iconic. Again, Crash is fairly distinct in his design. The music itself is fine, if not a little bit grating, especially on those runs where you want to get a perfect run. It can be very, very frustrating, to say the least. I think the other thing that I found very humorous or funny in this game is that, okay, so I'm not a wisecracking, but a very goofy kind of character, Bandicoot, who's mostly traversing around a world of ancient ruins and things, treasure hunting, finding gems, while the world around me is falling apart. And it just kind of shocked me how hilariously similar this is to the Uncharted series. I know that it's like Naughty Dog's kind of spiritual successor, but I never really considered how similar these two games about a Bandicoot and Nathan Drake actually were. Surprisingly similar in a lot of ways that I found pretty funny. Again, the other unique thing about Crash that is, honestly, this is the worst part of the game, especially on the original PS1. The only way to save, weirdly enough, is after you complete a bonus stage in the level. That is just bizarre. There is no manual save method. So you have to complete a bonus stage in order to get the opportunity to manually save. So that includes things like if you get a perfect run and you want to save that, you then have to do another stage's bonus stage to actually save that progress, which is just insane. Again, the platforming is forgiving, but it's not easy. And I guess the other kind of thing about it is that because this is on the original PlayStation controller, um, it's using the D-pad for its main platforming thing, and it's not the best. I mean, D-pads have never been good for platforming for extended use. I did have flashbacks to Turok as I was playing this, and there's that one platforming section on Turok that absolutely is just frankly abysmal. And it definitely reminded me of that. Fortunately, my thumbs weren't hurting too much, but still, yeah, just the fact that that was an issue at all is just, the effect of, the D-pad and platformers in general. I guess the other thing that's very funny to mention and think about is, of course, there's one level in this game that was featured in Uncharted 4 as kind of like a throwback, and you actually have to beat it in order to like win a bet with your wife. I forget her name, but yeah, Nathan has to play Crash Bandicoot, and so I thought of that as well as I was playing this. But yeah, that's all I can really say about Crash. Honestly, it's just a platformer about a Bandicoot. There's really not much else. I think his lineage has been more so about his idea and reputation. Definitely from the era of edgy, cool, funny mascot kind of characters like Sonic and Banjo, kind of, but not really. But yeah, no, it was surprisingly fun, honestly, and not as frustrating as I thought, unless you're trying to 100% it with all the gems and all that stuff. But I digress. But yeah, that's Crash Bandicoot. Surprisingly well made, and yeah, has my respect. Also, great legacy, apparently great racing game spin-off, and just another one of those, monoliths in the industry that I was just pleased to finally play. Anyway, guys, that's it for this one. I'll see you later. Bye.